Alright, hello, Get a Life podcast, Kunai fans, listeners, friends, family, everybody else I cannot mention or name if I wanted to. I am here with my friends Bish and Kevin.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Oh, Kevin, you went first. Oh, wow. Okay. Sup, guys? It's me, Bish. Damn you,
Yes,
Kevin.
hello both of you. And today we're going to be covering a show that should have been finished months ago. Danganronpa the animation. We're gonna be covering all the bits and pieces of it, but before we get into that, Bish, if I will leave the stage to you.
Thank you, Jeff. For you new folks, Get Life Podcast Kunai is a monthly anime discussion podcast under the Get Life group. Due to the nature of discussion, we can't avoid spoilers of the show to be discussed for the shows that are based off an existing piece of work, whether it's manga, light novel, or some other media form, including games. We're not going to be covering the source material. We can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. If you'd like to suggest a show for us to watch and make an episode of on Kunai, send us your suggestion on our Twitter at Get Life Podcast, or by leaving us a review. And remember, if you want to support what we do on Kunai, check out our sponsors, Japan Crate. Go to www.getlifepodcast.com/Japan Crate. Use the code GALP for $3 off. That's a bloody big saving. If you want to watch anime, doesn't need to be this one, but if you want to watch anime, keep up to date with what we do watch on Kunai, you can support us by signing up for our 14-day free trial of Crunchyroll Premium for everything anime, crunchyroll.com/Kunai. Joe?
Thank you very much, Bish. And just so you guys get an idea of what we're talking about, Danganronpa the Animation is a 13-episode murder mystery series directed by director Seiji Kishu and writer Makoto Uezu. The anime is based on the first entry in the series, Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, written and created by Kazutaka Kodaka. It was animated by Studio Lark, known for shows such as Assassination Classroom, Persona 4 the Animation, and one of their more recent works, Danganronpa 3 The Ends of Whole Week Academy. And it ran from July 4th, 2013 to September 26th, 2013. And with that, let's get started with the first impressions. So I just want to get your opinions on what you guys saw of the show when you went into it the first time, maybe after a couple episodes, and what you guys think of the show when you began.
So, basically, just as a background for this show, similar to Persona 4 the animation, I kind of got into it because of two people, one of which is Jacob. Shout out to Jacob, my boy Jacob. Basically, I didn't have a PS Vita at the time, and he was nagging me. I was like, look, you got to get a Vita, you got to get Persona, and you got to get Danganronpa. And I didn't know what the fuck Danganronpa was, and I didn't want to spend £200 on a Vita and then another £50 on this game that I don't know about. So he was like, okay, look, watch the anime, at least it'll give you some of the story. So I watched the anime before dropping a £50 on it. And at first, when I watched it, originally, I'm going back many years, it was very difficult to watch because of the violence and the gore. And you know what? I kind of got over it because it wasn't so gory because of the pink as opposed to the red. I don't know why that was. Maybe it was to lower the game's rating or something, the PEGI rating. To be honest with you, another thing that I didn't realize, come to think about it, is that my boy Daniil, it's 5 years of Kunai, so I have to mention Daniil every year, right? Yeah, it just has to be like that. But my boy Daniil actually used to play Danganronpa way back when on the PSP before it even came over to the European market and etc. So he played it in Japanese, like imported the game, etc. So he told me about it. I didn't really care much for it until the anime came out, and then it was really when Jacob held my hand and he was like, watch this anime and buy the game and all this. To be honest with you, I like the premise of the show. That's really what hooked me in terms of first impressions. It kept me hooked. I wanted to know what each episode was, what each character was who was gonna die next. That was the main thing that kept me going. I wanted to know who's gonna die next. Is it going to be one of my favorite characters? Kind of like the whole appeal of Game of Thrones. A lot of people watch it for the sex, but also a lot of people watch it to see whether or not their characters die. I wanted to know how the culprit was murdered, the victim, etc. That whole sort of thing was interesting. It's kind of like watching a CSI, kind of like a crime scene show, but with kids in high school. It was interesting, and I like the whole class trials element. So that kind of kept me involved. In particular, I never used to watch this kind of content before, and Danganronpa introduced me to that. So it was all sort of fresh. It wasn't just my first interaction with Danganronpa. It was my first interaction to murder mysteries. It was my first interaction to sort of, I don't know how to say it, like, not discussion, but like trials and like law type things. Because I never used to watch that kind of TV shows.
Because it's
like
really
CSI
new for you, right?
Like that.
If I remember correctly, other than, this and another, which we've also featured on Kunai, you don't usually watch violent shows, right? Not to say that either of these shows are like particularly violent, but they are pretty gory, right? So,
and this show does have a lot of moe stuff in it as well. Like the characters are quite moe, some of them. So that's what I also liked about it, was the fact that there was a little bit for everyone, and that kind of kept me hooked. It wasn't a show that I dropped at all.
For the first 2 episodes, right? Because I mean, people die starting episode 2 already, right? So it picks up really, really quickly. And my question for you is, when you first watched for the very first time, did you want to drop it because of the goriness or the deaths?
No.
Okay.
I was interested because if the blood was red, possibly I would have dropped the show.
Just because of the color?
Just because of the color of blood, it does affect you on a psychological way, I would assume. The fact that it's all like pink, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool. It's like someone had a highlighter that bursted in their pocket. Like, that's what it was, like, to me. And the fact that there was this kind of comedic bear that was going around made it a lot funner. I was like, okay, I want to see more of Monokuma.
You can relate to Monokuma?
He killed someone in the first episode or the second episode. I was like, oh, cool, Monokuma, yeah. I like that.
Okay.
It was endearing.
I just asked that because I remember you being particularly, not squeamish, but you weren't fond of the gore on another.
Look, I'll tell you something. Another's gore was on another level. Like, you actually saw that shit happen. Danganronpa frames it in such a way where...
That is true, yeah.
Where it's not necessarily showing you the gore. Like, I remember there was one scene in another where the umbrella.
Yeah.
That got me. I don't even use umbrellas anymore because of that. You fucked up umbrellas for me, Kevin. And I'm like, no, I have to use handheld umbrellas because they don't have that shit. Because I'm afraid that's going to happen. So you ruined me on umbrellas for life. And I live in London where it rains a lot. So fuck you, Kevin.
I mean, I guess you do bring up a good point, right? Danganronpa, it's a very violent topic, but it handles it in a, I'd say, almost palatable way, right? Because you always, like, basically everyone dies, or almost, in the show, right? It's kind of like Hamlet. But it's just, you don't see the death. So I guess because of that, and because of the fact that, it's like pink blood, and because of the art style, right? It's not exactly nitty-gritty realistic. I can see why people would be more open to watching it, even if you're not necessarily into that, right? If you're not like a Saw addict, right? Then, okay. Now, on my end, well, I'm kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum as Bish and as Joe, as you'll find out in a second, if you didn't already somehow know that he was, like a Danganronpa addict. But for me, this is basically just the culmination of, I'd say years of Joe and Bish and Jay. Well, I mean, basically everyone I know through Gelt just pressuring me into watching it, right? Because I played Zero Escape before, right? And the creators of Zero Escape and Danganronpa are actually like pretty good friends. So people are always like, yo, Kevin, if you liked Zero Escape, you'll really like Danganronpa, right? And people, exactly. And they're kind of similar in concept as well, right? With deaths and all that. It's framed in like this giant game and all that. So I was always intrigued, but I never found a reason to watch or play the game, right? Until now, I guess. And honestly, with the first few episodes, I was pretty impressed. The art, honestly, was the first thing that stuck out to me, right? Danganronpa reminds me a bit of Attack on Titan in the sense that it has very distinct outlines, right? It has very crisp outlines, right? Which make the characters pop up out of the backgrounds, right? And so it was really good, right? Not as good as the game itself, obviously, but it's really up there for an adaptation. Like, even without playing the game, you get to appreciate the visual style, right? Because it's reproduced so faithfully. But apart from that, we'll get into the art a bit later in the discussion, but I found that it was really nice, but at the beginning, they went really, really quick. All right, just to make something clear here, I didn't go in completely blind. I played about like 2 to 3 hours of Danganronpa. I got up to just before the first trial. So I do know what the basic mechanics are and stuff, and I felt that in the show, it was kind of rushed, right? In the game, anyways, you really get time to absorb what's going on. So yeah, just another thing aside from the art, which really caught my attention in the first few episodes, was just the pacing. So just to give you guys a bit of background, I actually played a bit of the game before watching. I didn't go in completely blind. I got up until like around just before the first trial, so I know the basic mechanics and stuff, right? How the game works and all that, and the characters. And one thing
you got an idea of like the trial, like how the trials felt when you actually went through like the mini games and all that.
Yeah. So one of the main differences that I find between the beginning in the show and in the game is that in the game you really get time to let everything sink in, right? Take in the atmosphere, the feel of the school, right? Just the shitty situation that they're all caught in, right? Whereas in the game, I felt that it was like really sped up. Sorry, not in the game, but in the show, it was really sped up, and it was like really exposition heavy, right? You don't really have any time to process what's going on, right? And I guess it's one of the sacrifices that you make when you transition from a game to a show, right? You don't really have the time to let players explore the world on their own, right? Trying to dig through every nook and cranny. But even still, I find that they didn't really spend enough time on describing Hope's Peak and just the characters and stuff. It's like you're just kind of thrown into the thick of the action right away. And for some people, that's great. They don't like it when stuff's really slow, right? They just like to get into the plot immediately and not to be, bogged down by details, right? But for me, especially considering the fact that, it is a dark premise, I would have appreciated a bit more, description and just a bit more atmosphere at the beginning, which I find it kind of lacked.
So you mean honestly, like little subtitles maybe that described one thing or the other?
Yeah, because in the game, like he notices how the windows are bolted and all that, and he comments on that, right? And you can tell that he's scared and terrified, right? Just like you and I would be. But in the show, it's really like glossed over. I think they mention it like once, and they never go over it again. And that's
There's some things within the show that I think it's intentional, because we have to bear in mind that this anime came out before the game came out in the West, right? So it was mainly kind of sort of done as promotional material. All anime that is based off of works are there to promote its source material. So I think maybe it might have been the case that there was like 12 episodes, I think, of this anime. So to go in depth, and the fact that the way that the anime is structured, that there's a murder, then there's a case, and then there's a murder and the case. So every 2 episodes, there's a person that dies, basically. So to put all of that in, I don't think there's enough time, so to say.
Interesting that both of you mentioned that, because if I remember correctly from something I read a while back, apparently there was a bit of debate with adapting Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. There was a lot of concern concerning just how they'd be able to fit all like what they wanted to fit into the anime with only like 13 episodes like that. But in the end, they went through with it, and they felt that with what they had, they were able to adapt everything the best way they could.
Yeah, I mean, I get their time constraints. I just feel that just spending a bit more time in the pilot episode would have done it a lot of good, because the pilot episode is so important, right? It's setting the stage for the rest of the show.
The funny thing is, Kevin, is that you mentioned that you would have liked to see more exposition in that sense. But for me, it kind of gave me a sense of mystery. I wanted to know why. I would have get it if I understood if, Naegi had sworn and he saw the things and he made a comment or whatever. That would have made sense. But then it allows me to see it before Naegi sees it. And then I'm like, okay, why are these bolted? What is the story behind Hope's Peak? And that's, for me, it was intriguing. I felt it was intriguing that the fact that they didn't explain those things, because it allowed me to question them, as opposed to the anime just plopping it out on the table for me. That's what it felt like.
That's what I felt that they did, though, because they're like, by the way, you're at Hope's Peak now. By the way, this is your predicament, and these are the other people you're going to meet. You're in a death game. This is that. We're done with the intro. Let's move on to the nitty-gritty, the meat of the story. The introduction's done. You know, it feels like the introduction was more so of a checklist than an element in and of itself.
But the question is, does it need to be more than a checklist? I don't think it needs to be more than just a checklist.
I think it does, because the atmosphere is so important, right? This isn't, your typical, normal Moe high school rom-com or whatever, right? This is, you're supposed to believe that these characters are in danger, right? They're supposed to be frightened and terrified. They don't know what's going on, where they are.
Yeah, but the fact is, but look, I just want to say something. You mentioned that they don't know where they are, but at the same time, we don't know where they are. So maybe it's a way for us to feel that we're in the same position as them. Do you see what I mean? To kind of sympathize with them a bit more. Maybe I'm defending it a bit too much, but that's how I feel.
Well, you both make very valid points. I think when it comes to like a game and like a television series, they're both very similar in their own rights, they're both very similar, but they have their own ways of portraying a story. When it's a show, you're mainly relying on the environments, the characters, and your own perception of the plot in order to gauge your interest and to learn more about it. But with a game, it's more about you assuming the role of somebody else who is going through this.
And there's something that I really want to add on. The fact that they're two mediums, one's a game and one's an anime, like you kind of already get that exposition from the scenery, because in the game you're limited to what you're viewing, right? But in the anime you get to see a lot more in terms of scenery, in terms of what's going on in the background, etc. So you kind of get a feel about
what. Can you elaborate on that? What you mean you get to see more? Because I'd say that I really do not see that, because in a game, right, you have time to explore every detail of a background if you want to. What in a show you get the one glimpse and then it's done.
I believe he's referring to just how your view isn't restricted to Makoto. It's you get to see, like you have the privilege of seeing everything that occurs.
But in the introduction, is that the case? You haven't met the characters yet. That's the thing. You haven't met the characters yet.
Good point.
Well, I thought this discussion was more just about like overall, like with the medium in general.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about like the way it's applied to the introduction, justly. I just don't think it does the game justice, with the way that was rushed. But we can agree to disagree, right?
I mean, it'll tie into my impressions myself, but I see what you mean. Like when I went to rewatch it, it's something that I picked up on quickly compared to what I saw before. Now that I've played through all of the games, so like I've kind of have this prior experience, and I've also seen the anime myself. So, but yeah, continue.
And I don't know. That's basically it for my first impressions, though. Overall, it's positive, right? I'm not saying the introduction's bad. I just maybe it's it's a double-edged sword that I played a bit of the game before getting into it, right? It just I know there's a bit more beyond.
Well, this is also coming from people who have like played through the series. Like it's not like it's totally valid.
Mm-hmm. But then
because
again, I'm guessing someone who wants to get into Danganronpa, right? Just like Bish, right? Who doesn't want to invest in a PS4 or in a PS Vita to play the game. They'll just be like, you know what? I'm gonna watch the show first, see if I like it, and then decide whether or not I want to move on with the series, right? So, I guess for someone who doesn't have that awareness, maybe they won't mind, right? They'll be just fine with it, or maybe they'll feel that they just won't feel a connection because the introduction is rushed, in my opinion.
Well, to be honest with you, you do raise a good point, but I think it's mainly because you've already played the game. You've already not played the whole game, but you've already played that introduction portion. So you kind of already know what's supposed to be going on, etc. And it's kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, you also started the anime first before watching the game. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, it's the kind of show where I would recommend it if you haven't had any exposure to Danganronpa yet, but it's something that I couldn't recommend as much if you've already played through the first game, because in that regard, it's sort of treated like a downgrade at that point. I'll talk about this more later, but it's a show that you can really appreciate when you're completely blind to Danganronpa.
And talking about that, I really want to get into your first impressions, how you got into it, what you thought, etc.
Yeah, because that directly ties into my impressions. Like, I'm in a very similar case with you, Bish, though it wasn't that I really knew people that have played through Danganronpa. It was more like I saw this and I discovered it for the first time. When I saw it was around the time I was getting into anime. Like, it was during my freshman year of high school. They started airing Danganronpa the animation on Funimation. I didn't have an account, so I had to wait an extra week every single time, and it annoyed the shit out of me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you
not to mention all the ads, so many ads. But I the first time I looked at the art, I was like, wow, this is something that I've just never seen before. Because it was my first time seeing something so sporadic, if that makes sense. Something that was out there, something that was very nonsensical, something that was just weird. And it was the first thing that kind of defied my way of thinking and imagination just by witnessing it. So I'm like, you know what? I want to give this a try, see what it's about. Like, it might be a pretty good show. It was also my first time with the murder mystery genre, like you, Bish. So going into it was like this whole new experience for me. And as soon as I saw the Monokuma, when I saw Makoto, and the whole premise with these incredibly gifted students being thrown into a killing game, like, I knew I was going to be watching something special. I'm just repeating words at this point, but it was just something so unique to me, something that was different, something I've never seen in my life before. It was like something completely foreign just entered my life, and it opened my eyes to something amazing. The first episode was, it was my first time with Danganronpa, so I didn't know how the pacing would work. I didn't know how the games played. It's exactly why I recommend it, like, if you're getting to Danganronpa for the first time, because you'll be able to appreciate the pacing more. Like, even if it's a way of lying to yourself, which I can kind of see, it's still something that is a lot more enjoyable the first time. I didn't really have any qualms with the pacing my first time watching it. I enjoyed being introduced to Monokuma, hearing his nonsensical banter, and just the fact that it was so comedic in something that was supposed to be very very serious. Yeah, it was jarring to me, but I really liked it.
In a way, I think that works. The whole you need it to break up, otherwise it'll be very depressing.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the whole point, to keep it more uplifting through all of these darker moments, and I believe it excelled at that.
That being said, do you think that the Monokuma appearances and even those things, would you consider them as favorite moments, or if not, what do you think are your favorite moments?
I wouldn't call that a favorite moment. It would be more of a staple, in my opinion. It's what makes the series. It's not something I can call a favorite moment. It's like half of the series. So then Monokuma is half.
So then what would you say are your favorite moments?
That's very hard. Well, I guess while we're at it, I'm pretty much done with my first impressions. So while we're at it, let's talk about our favorite moments in that regard, because I do want to get into that a little more now that we're talking about it. My favorite moments, it's very hard, because there were a lot of wonderful scenes in that show that really hit hard. I would say my favorite moment, if I had to pick one, would have been at the end of Sakura's trial.
Okay. At the end of her trial, not her investigation or anything like that.
No, okay. At the end of her trial.
Well, why is that?
Because that's when we're introduced to the truth behind her murder, how Aoi was essentially lied to by Monokuma and almost killed everyone in the trial as a result. And then when we heard Sakura's actual message, I felt that that message single-handedly warped the story in the cast's favor. And seeing everyone suddenly feel unified together and keen on attacking the mastermind, that was something that it was a different feeling compared to before, because before there were people in the killing game saying, like, we don't want this killing to continue, we want this to stop, but it never stops. But then when you get to, like, near to the end of that scene, you see you have this different feeling than before when people are saying, you know, we're no longer participating in this.
Well, I think the feeling is hope, no?
Well, fuck you, Bish.
I mean,
I didn't mean that as a pun.
No, okay, look, okay. I get what you're saying. It was essentially, yeah, you could feel their hope, but it was just a feeling of true unification at that moment. And I would say that second half with everyone feeling unified and working together was a lot more interesting than the killings themselves.
Okay.
Okay. That's very interesting.
Valid point.
Kevin, do you mind if I jump in?
Go ahead, actually.
Yeah. So basically, you mentioned that you were interested in the second half of the Sakura arc, right? I was more so interested on the first half. So for me,
Is
where it was
everyone's
just straight
favorite moment
killings?
just Sakura arc? Can we all just agree that it was the peak of
it's
season
the peak
one?
of the show. I think.
Well, it's because it's a very
It's a hope
I
speak.
can't help it. It's a very emotional part of the show. It says a lot about what's been going on and why everyone needs to stick together.
Definitely. Like for me, I think my favorite episode was Sakura's death investigation, right? It was my favorite due to the level of selflessness from Sakura and the emotion from Asahina and the willingness to let others die because she thought that they'd drove Sakura to suicide. The level of friendship there is just beyond anything, right? And the whole episode 9 lockroom murder was very intriguing. Like I was thinking, I remember initially watching it and then rewatching it and I'm like, how the fuck who killed her? And the room is locked. And then I was like, shit, man. That popped my
because
head.
you don't think of suicide as a potential thing.
You don't.
Because there's no reason for suicide.
You don't. And
like,
there's nothing
grand
listed
scheme of
in the
things.
rules saying that you can't kill yourself or anything like that. I think what I did enjoy about the episodes is that you could also join in with the investigation, right? I felt that I really wanted to know. I was like, I was taking notes originally when I was watching the show. And this is back in the day, let's say when the show came out. I was like making notes. I was like, how is it? Because I was watching it simulcast, and so I was like, how is it that she was able to do that, right? And I could have looked down on wikis or whatever, but I was trying to figure out myself, and I was just shocked at how a murder can be committed in a locked room. And I think when reevaluating after the trial, you notice the hints within the investigation itself. So you notice it after the trials happen. It's something that you don't necessarily realize, but she's smiling when she's dead, right?
Yeah.
So she knew what she was doing, and when you look back at the episode, because it's in there, they put that in on purpose so that you know that she committed suicide, but you wouldn't have realized it at the time, right? So it's those little.
Well, it's just how the show is structured. It's because they have such an emphasis on kill another person, get away with it, and you graduate, that you don't think of the possibility of suicide. Because if you kill yourself, there's no benefit to it.
There isn't, and that's why I mentioned it's so selfless, because she done it for the others, basically. So it's a very beautiful thing, and I think Sakura, thanks for giving me that great moment. Another favorite moment of mine is Mondo's trial, right? Specifically towards the end of his trial, where I didn't look.
Is it his death scene?
It's right before his death, where he reveals the reason, his secret. You know how everyone had their secrets, and they, the sort of thing that's supposed to drive them towards killing, right? His one was that he was responsible for his brother's death. The regret that he had was really heartbreaking, and I felt that, to me, it felt like he kind of wasted his chance at life that his brother gave him, right? So his brother effectively took his own life so that Mondo would live. So he pushed his brother out the way and got hit by a truck. And, his execution scene was my favorite as well. It was very befitting to Mondo, and the Mondo butter thing at the end was funny, but because it kind of lightened up the mood for me. Otherwise, it would have been a very depressing thing. I was like, I was thinking, Mondo, look, I get it. I don't understand why that led you to murder. Don't get me wrong, but I kind of understood why, because he might have felt that, look, I don't want to waste this life that my brother sacrificed to give me. And that was very heartbreaking. And I was just like, damn it. It doesn't excuse what you did, Mondo, but I was crying. I was like, damn it.
Really?
Damn.
Wow. Damn.
Literally,
Okay.
Mondo's death really got to me. I didn't even like him as a character, but his death really got to me.
It's weird because when the characters commit murder in Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc, it's like you can't really forgive them.
No, you can't.
But there's this underlying reason for it that you just sympathize with.
But that's not the case with all the characters, though. Let's be honest.
No, far from it. No, I think it'd be disingenuous to imply that all the characters.
Actually, you're right. I'll say that for most of the characters because I freaking hate Celeste's trial.
I was about to mention Celeste as a counterpoint. Like, she did it for them, for them dollar bills.
She doesn't want a castle. She wants freaking like vampires in her fucking like fantasy that would never happen.
Yeah, but
I hated that.
Man, I just feel that Mondo, I never cared for him, and even in his death, I was like, all right, guess he's dead, because I felt it was so goddamn cliche, like this, he's about to die, and they're like, oh shit, we didn't develop his character enough, and he's got like 20 seconds of screen time left before he dies. We gotta develop him. So they're like, oh shit, let's drop this
the funny
this
thing
bombshell,
is,
the sudden revelation about his past, this sob story to make people feel for him.
The funny thing is that if you actually played the game, well, I don't want to be that guy that says this, but it's just good for everyone to know. When you're actually playing the game and you go through the free time events, he does mention his brother. So a lot of these things, a lot of these secrets that are in the show alludes to these free time events that you would experience within the game.
Unfortunately, the show doesn't touch upon the free time events, which is something we'll talk about a little later. But it's a shame because there's a lot of nice context in the game that just isn't shown in the anime. But of course, if you haven't played the game, then you wouldn't know about that. So that's like a whole different issue.
Kevin, am I right in saying that the Sakura...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's definitely the highlight of the first season. And for me, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what you guys have already said, but for me, again, what really got me was it was Aoi's reaction to Sakura's death, right? And the way she dealt with it. I feel that in her trial, right? I was still I suspected that she committed suicide, but I'd kind of been like double mind fucked, right? During the trial, because I was like, okay, so somebody definitely killed her. Right? She may have committed suicide, but I think somebody killed her. And then I was like, I killed her. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? I thought they were friends, right? So I was like, oh shit, did Aoi just put on, this facade?
Shit.
Yeah, I was like, did she just put on this facade to...
Well, that's interesting because,
right?
because the first person that died also put on the facade to murder as well, in the same vein. Am I right in saying that? The idol. I forgot her name. She's so irrelevant.
Mizuno?
Well, I'd say it's a different case because she was trying to frame somebody else. Aoi just straight up was saying she killed her.
Yeah, but at the time of watching, I assumed, I was like, oh shit, man, is she like Mizuno? Like what?
Well, we have to assume assume that like Sayako was the one who ended up killing Leon. Like, then if Makoto was framed and there was no way to prove that Makoto wasn't the killer, then Sakura would have gone away. So I would say they're very different circumstances with that compared to Sakura's trial and Aoi's admittance to the murder.
But there was that, right? And then she reveals that, okay, no, she didn't actually kill her. She just wanted to say that to try to get them to accuse her and, basically get back at everyone that she thought was responsible, right? So it's pretty fucking dark, right? I wouldn't view it the same way as Bish did, saying, oh my god, it's such an endearing, display of friendship, right? But it goes to show just how much Sakura means that way, right?
Wait. So you're not saying it's the ultimate friendship story? I think it is, Kevin. To die for your friend.
PSA, here at Galp, we and our sponsors do not support killing other people or framing other people for crimes for the sake of friendship. That's Bish's view and Bish's view.
That's not my view. Don't get it twisted. That's not my view. I'm just saying, like, the fact that she loves her so much that she was willing to die for her.
Sakura was the mom of the group.
Did you say Sakura is the mom of the group?
Yes.
No.
Like, she looked
no.
over everyone.
No,
She was
she's
like,
not.
I want everyone to be happy.
No, she's not the mom of the group.
Yes, she
no.
is.
Sakura's like the fat kid.
Yes,
like,
she is.
No. Sakura's like the fat kid in the sense that she just wants everyone to be happy. Like, that's just me. Like, that's how I was in high school. I just want everyone to be happy, and I was a fat kid, right? So that's what Sakura is. That's,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh. No.
that's how I
no.
see it.
Alright.
No.
But
Alright,
Sakura's not the mom
so,
of the group. Who's the mom?
To add to Bish's list of, you know, never-ending list of weird ass fetishes. Apparently, he sees himself as this super muscular, buff, like brown-skinned Japanese girl with white hair.
That's it, man. I am Sakura.
Bish sexually identifies as Sakura.
That's it.
That's
No,
what he learned today.
I imagine him looking like Sakura's original
Artwork,
like original style, like in like official art for the game,
which looks legit.
where she actually doesn't look super buff. She looks like a normal high school girl.
That's me.
And it's kind of like night and day.
That's it, man. The funny thing is with Sakura, right? I don't want to say this, but I kind of hated her initially. And then after the scene, rewatching a couple of times, and because of the friendship, Kevin, Jesus Christ, man, you guys don't see what true friendship is. Because of the friendship, I found it a bit more bearable, and I've actually grown to love Sakura as a character.
One of the few characters that I think was really well developed, honestly.
Definitely.
Right? I found Mondo and shit, like, I didn't give a shit. Honestly, I did not give a shit about most of the other characters.
And the funny thing is, Kevin, it's weird to kind of compare it to the game. The game doesn't really... I don't feel that the game does Sakura justice in comparison to the anime. The anime does Sakura a lot more justice. Like, I don't know. I've always kind of ignored Sakura. Like, I never really gotten to speak to Sakura in terms of free time, in terms of anything. And now, after watching this anime again for like the third time, I was like, oh shit, man, I'm going to replay Danganronpa and I'm actually going to talk to Sakura and I'm going to learn about Sakura. The game doesn't really give you that incentive to talk to Sakura as much as the anime kind of does. Do you see what I mean?
I mean, I don't think it's a matter of incentive. That's kind of an unfair comparison because there's no incentive in the show because it's a show. They present it to you, right? So it's kind of, it's your own personal bias.
I think he's referring to
right?
the fact that characters will present themselves in a certain way, and the game gives you the opportunity to look more into those characters. So I wouldn't call it incentivization. It's more like when you go to the game and you're like, hey, I want to learn more about Sakura, it just doesn't really do enough to justify the free time with her.
I'm not sure I understand, but all right. Because for me, it's kind of the opposite, right? The game, if you're interested in Sakura, you have the opportunity to go talk to her, right? That's like saying...
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, exactly. So wouldn't the game do a better job of representing her? It lets you dive deeper into the characters if you want to, right? Whereas the show doesn't give you that freedom because it's a show, right? It doesn't have the time to spend on it.
Well, I thought what Bish was saying was, like, Sakura's, like, representation within the anime was just better in the game itself.
That's it.
That's not what I got from Bish. What I got from Bish was... When I first played the game, I wasn't interested in Sakura, and then I watched the anime, which forced me to know about Sakura, and now I'm interested.
That's not what it is, and it was more of
That's exactly what it sounds
Joe
like,
said.
though.
Me and Joe on the same level. Joe gets it.
Okay.
Joe gets it.
All right, sure.
Oh, you're dismissing me right there, mate. All right, sure.
We are Danganronpas.
Yeah, that's it. Danganronpas. We're basically Mondo and what's his name again? Ishimaru. That's what we are.
How dare you?
What do you mean how dare me?
He is like one of the best boys in that show.
Ishimaru.
Kiyotaka? Yeah, Kiyotaka Ishimaru. Best moral compass.
Okay, we'll get onto this later on when we talk about characters.
Oh, hang on. I have another favorite moment that isn't surprisingly episode... it's episode 7, and if I remember correctly, that isn't related to Sakura. That is the episode right before with Celeste, and I honestly forget his name because he's completely fucking useless. Fat monkey kid.
Oh, why do you call him monkey kid?
Like
Hifumi Yamada.
Obese Sukong, you know, like...
Wow.
Yeah, the fanfic writer.
Yeah. I just like that, not because of the characters, because the characters are just... Shut up! The characters...
Sorry, continue.
The characters, that's Real Celeste and Monkey Kid, are fucking terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're the worst
felt
characters.
No connection to them whatsoever, but the murder was really interesting because, like, I think it was the first time where I think like 3 or 4 people died in that episode. Right? I don't remember who died exactly, but there was a lot going on. Right?
The victims were Hifumi and Kiyotaka.
But there was people that were injured as well, no?
Yeah, injured, and then the people who are faking being dead and shit, right? So, like...
Well, Hifumi is the one who was faking his death, Celeste pretended to become injured.
Yeah, so because of that, I thought that was like, oh shit, 4 people just died, right? What's going on? Because they'd be trying to uncover the case, and after suddenly, somebody else would supposedly die, and it's constantly evolving, right? It keeps you at the edge of your seat. And that's what I like about it, right? It's kind of like a thriller, almost. You don't really know what to expect, and there's constantly something that's going on. Whereas the other episodes, right, the victim dies at the beginning, and then it kind of the tension kind of goes down gradually from there as you unpiece slowly what's going on. But with that episode, it maintains that adrenaline throughout.
One thing I didn't like about that episode really was the fact that there was no, for Hifumi, like there was no sort of motive for him. Like he was helping out.
He was completely fucking useless.
He's such a cuck. Like why? Why did he do that? I never understood. Like
he was sucking Celeste's lady dick. That's why.
I never understood that because there's nothing he's gaining from it. He knows he's gonna die anyway, even if he does vote.
No, but I think Monokuma explained why though. He was like, oh yeah, there's a mechanic where I never said you couldn't assist someone else with the murder, right? So you can both get away or something. I don't know.
No, you can't. Okay, so it's actually the opposite. When you have an accomplice, only the person who concocted the plan graduates.
Oh, okay. So I guess he's a complete idiot then.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like that to me. That never made any sense. I was like,
it was his. No, it's because he wanted to get closer to Alter
Smash?
Ego, and because he fell in love with Celeste as well.
Smash with Alter Ego.
Well, yeah, sure.
Hifumi for Smash. DLC.
But yeah, like it's.
She's the DLC character.
He's like King K. Rool, just fucking like stomps on people with his belly.
Somebody's probably working on a mod for that. Don't even at me.
That's too much.
Okay, but anyway, like I like that you mentioned that case because that case also is also a good example of how the rules play a part in the trial itself, because the whole like twist with that was how the body discovery now has been played at certain times and played for the 2 of them, which is how they were able to unravel that Hifumi was still alive at one point. Like that was really cool. That was really cool to me when I saw it for the first time.
But yeah, for me that's basically it. I mean, the highlights still got to be episode 8 and episode 9. Right, Sakura's whole arc there. She was one of the few characters where I was like, yep, she's well developed. Right, you feel for her.
She was, yeah.
It's a shame to lose her, and as you said, unlike the other characters, right? Joe, you said that her death was meaningful, right? She really made the characters unite against Monokuma, and I completely agree there.
It was, it wasn't in vain. It was some significance.
Her death was significant, right? It wasn't just a checklist to reduce the amount of players, right? Whereas, for the first few deaths, it's kind of like whatever. It's just kind of there for shock value, right? It's just there because they need someone to die for the plot to progress. But with hers, it actually has an impact on the story, right? Because with her death, the initial death game ends, right, and the new arc starts, right, with the arc where they try to say fuck this game, fuck that system, we're going to get to the bottom of this and try to get at whoever's whoever's behind this, right, for Sakura's death.
Like, it encourages the mastermind to take more action, which I found a lot more interesting than the killings themselves. Like, it's not to say the killings themselves were uninteresting, because I enjoyed them as well. It's just that second arc just had a lot of cool things going for it, and I guess while we're at it, let's talk about that for a bit. Just talk about, like, I guess we'll also talk about the killings as well, like the story, how it progressed from the beginning to that arc and to the end. So, like, who wants to start?
For me, I would like to start because I've got quite a little bit for the story. Mainly, what I want to talk about in terms of story is the way it's structured, right? The story is structured very similarly to the game in terms of murder, then trial, then it's the only thing it's missing is a free time element, but I understand why they don't include it. I think you would have learned more about the characters without it, right? I think it's the fact that it's also structured in chapters. Like when you go into the show, the episodes are not labeled as episodes; they're labeled as chapters. So episode 9 would have been chapter 9, like in the game, right? So it's kind of similar in that sense to God Only Knows, because it's like a visual novel type setting. That structure in itself causes suspense, I think, especially when having to wait a week before episodes air. So that whole structure of, you know, this episode is the murder and the investigation. The next episode is the trial. So you have that week in between.
It's good that you mentioned like the whole week by week episode thing. It's something I think like to mention, but I guess we'll probably talk about it now. The pacing of the show also helped with sort of spreading it out, because you got to spend like a whole week theory crafting, thinking about how this could have happened, how this murder could have happened, who the culprit could have been, and like what the twists and turns could end up being. And I would say that was a part of the story too. Like, you thinking about it between episodes.
In a sense, it's very interactive.
Yeah, exactly. It's interactive, and it adds another layer to the story that helps it flesh out more, I would say.
But I think in a sense, that's only going to apply to the people that actually go home and do that. It doesn't necessarily apply to the people who like to binge watch the show.
That's true. For people who are like binging it, or just like, hey, like I'm not gonna think about this too much, I'll just wait till next week. Yeah, I understand.
Like, even for me, like when I was watching it, even when I was rewatching the show, I wasn't binging it. I was taking the time to sort of re-watch each episode, like wait like a week or wait a couple of days. So I kind of kept it to an episode a day in that sense. But because of the structure like that, and like I said, it doesn't necessarily work for people that are binging the show, because it's like they're not necessarily gaining as much from it, if you see what I mean. And in that sense, the structure kind of fails outside of that. But yeah, that's what I have to say about the story.
Before we move on to Kevin's, did you notice, like, since we both played the game, like did you notice that there were certain moments that are actually different from the game as well? Like, the anime had its own unique take on it.
I've noticed that. I think within the anime, right, and it's not something that is necessarily mentioned more so in the game, I've noticed that there's a lot of sort of, not necessarily changes in story, but more so changes in sort of cameos. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like, the game Danganronpa was based off of, because Danganronpa was based off another game that was axed by the studio. I forgot what the name was. I actually mentioned it here.
Are you referring to its beta?
It's beta, but it was actually a game. It was actually like a proper game, and it had like, they were gonna make it into, it's the game that led to Danganronpa, but I forgot the name of it.
Are you thinking of Distrust?
It had a particular name. I forgot the name of it. Whoa.
Because Distrust was the original beta.
Distrust, that's it.
For Danganronpa.
A lot of references to Distrust. Like, there's that room. They show off a room, like a classroom on the the highest floor or something, and there's blood all over the walls. But if you noticed it, the blood wasn't pink. The blood was red. That's a reference to a room within Distrust. So there's a lot of that sort of Easter eggs there. Like, even hardcore Danganronpa fans are not necessarily going to notice, but it's that sort of attention to detail that you may not even see in the game. That I saw there, but that's really what I meant by that.
So anything else you want to mention before we move on?
No, not really. I think we can move to Kevin.
All right. So, yeah, before we get to me, I want to learn more about you, because I have a fair bit to talk about. So I want to get yours out of the way. I'm very interested to hear what you thought about the story as a whole. Like, with the, let's say, like, because you're somebody who hasn't played the game as well, so this is completely blind to you. Like, this is beginning of the story to all the way to the reveal of the tragedy and the end of the world and everything. So I want to know what you thought of it.
Oh boy. Okay. Right. So in terms of the story, I found it to be pretty solid overall, but one problem that I have is that for the beginning at least, it really felt that, especially during the trials, that I was watching like an animated Let's Play on YouTube. I'm not gonna lie. And why do I say that? It's because you kind of just skip through all the clues and stuff, right? They just kind of like list all the clues at the crime scene, right? There's no exploration and all that. And I get that, obviously that's a limit, right? You can't really expect that.
Well, that'd be more like a walkthrough.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of it's a walkthrough, because there's even less like freedom, right? It's just kind of like they're going through all the evidence that you would normally find if you were to play the game yourself, right? There's no real time, in my opinion, for you to piece together what happened, with the notable exception of Sakura's trial, where I think that I was actually able to follow along with the clues and stuff, because the characters themselves, they really commented on every little detail for that trial. But for otherwise, I find that the fact that you're basically watching an animated playthrough kind of removes the suspense, right? Because you know that the characters will always make the right choices, that they will catch whoever's responsible and stuff, right? So the stakes don't feel as high, right? You feel like a spectator more than a participant, right? And that's kind of a shame, because I think one of the great things about Danganronpa is that, is the stakes, the feeling of, the thrill, the dread and all that. You don't know, whether the character is going to choose correctly or not when it comes to the trial, because from the beginning, right, they always say, if you choose the wrong person, everyone dies, right? So there's always that tension that's looming over every decision that they make. But in the show, unfortunately, since they kind of they're forced to just go with the quote unquote correct path, there is no suspense, honestly, for the trials. And another thing is that it feels kind of rushed in a way, and again, it comes down to the medium, right? I'm not holding this against the studio at all. It's just that because every episode is one trial, right? And a trial normally can last, like hours, right? Depending on how much you want to explore. You don't really have time to talk to the characters, to get to know the characters, right? Like there are some tidbits, like what's his name? There's Mondo and the other dude there, his friend. Chihiro, yeah. Like they form a friendship, right? For the episode where he dies, and then the dude dies, and that's it. That's all. You don't really get
kind of like that in the game as well. To be honest with you, like that's how I feel.
I would say it's a lot more better paced in the game in the game. I would say.
'Cause even if they don't get mentioned afterwards, right? At least I feel that you get to know them better, right? You get to sympathize with them a bit better. In the show, I really don't feel it's the case. Like for the first murder, what's his name? Baseball dude.
Leon.
See, like I have to look at my notes to remember their names, because I only remember them because of their one distinctive trait.
Well,
right, and that's it. They don't really have any notable motivations and stuff for me.
Sure.
On the most part, and they're really one-dimensional, right? It's a shame too, because their designs are so distinct, right? So you can still picture them in your head, but in terms of content, in terms of depth of character, I'm really struggling to dig and find, what their motivations were, their backgrounds and stuff, because the show doesn't really give you enough time to explore that, unfortunately. So in my head, they're all kind of caricatures, except for, the ones who survived till the end and Sakura, right? Because those are the ones that they really took time to flesh out, and to the detriment of the others, unfortunately.
To that end, I would ask you this. So the intent with the story is to make everyone feel like a main character. Did you get that feeling with the anime?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everyone was designed like a main character. Again, the art direction was amazing. No character felt the same, right?
Yeah.
You could not mistake one character for another. They had a very distinct visual style. And I think they really wanted to make everyone distinct in terms of personality too, because everyone has their central gimmick, right? Their main talent, right? It's just a shame for me that they, in the show anyways, they don't really seem to go past that. They remain at this gimmicky, one-dimensional stage for the most part, and never evolve past that, right? Like, for me, I was really disappointed at the end of the show, because I was like, man, I'm sure there's something with Mizuno, right? Because they specifically draw attention to the fact that she knows Naegi, right? So I'm like, oh shit, maybe she's a yandere or something, right? Or, maybe she's part of the plan or part of the game or something, right? When she died. But nope, what happened was she actually died in episode 2, and we never really get to see her again, right? Everyone kind of like almost forgets about her, and it's just, you have no reason to feel invested anymore after their deaths.
It's something that I really wanted to mention as well, and I'm sorry for butting in, but it's more so that every time looking at this anime story, it's there, and I feel that it's done on purpose to sort of promote the game. To me, it seems like an EA game, right? Where they give you the base game, it's like, oh, you gotta buy all the DLC just to experience the rest of it. I feel that the anime, in a way,
I can't say with that comparison, because
that's an extreme comparison,
a game.
Right?
That's all within the confines of a game.
True, but that's an extreme comparison. Really, what I want to say is that it feels like a teaser to me. It's an entry point into the world of Danganronpa, as opposed to being a complete thing. Because otherwise, realistically speaking, they're not going to make money from the game if people are just going to watch the game. If you see what I mean. right?
Well, of course, some aspect of it would be for the promotion, but
it's a double-edged sword, man.
It is a double-edged.
People can be repulsed and decide, like, if this is what Danganronpa the game is like, I'm not gonna buy it because I didn't like the show,
Don't get me wrong, but I mean, at the same time, more often than not, because it is a new thing and a lot of people are getting into Danganronpa, when they see it as an anime, like, at least from what I've seen here, the Funimation dub of, not even the Funimation dub, the actual Western release of Danganronpa took out a lot of the promotional material in it. So a lot of people don't feel that this is sort of promotional material. It doesn't really come across as that, but if you watch the original, like I watched it originally, and there was like adverts for Sony was actually paying for this show to be made. They're on the production committee. You don't necessarily see that within the Funimation version of the show, right? So it's like,
but I mean, even then, I can't really say that's an excuse.
It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for the show, right? But I understand why they do it because of that.
Well, because I think there was still a bit of love that they were trying to put into it, just because they were, again, it's what I said before, they were skeptical initially because they didn't think they would be able to fit Danganronpa within.
The funny thing is, Joe, I just want to ask a question to you. Do you find, for example, there is other Danganronpa medium, right? For example, there is that animation Danganronpa 3. Do you feel that in itself, that's a full piece of content? Am I correct in saying that? Because it needs to be, right?
I mean, it has to, because it completes the series.
Well, I wouldn't say it's just that. It's because that was the intent. The intent was to make that a full-fledged... Like, they didn't want to make a game for it. They straight up... They wanted to only do it during the anime. But that means they can also pace it however they want to.
This intent for the anime is to sort of fill... Like, not necessarily... Is to have the game to fill in the blanks, right? That's how I see it. It seems like a companion anime. It's not... I don't feel that it's meant to be... It's either meant to introduce you into Danganronpa or it's supposed to be a companion to Danganronpa. It's disappointing to think that, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it is what it is.
The way I see it, there are two demographics, right? You've either have or have not played Danganronpa, right? So for fans of the game, right, if you go into this already having played the game, already being a huge fan, you might like it, but if you're like a newcomer like me, right? You might not view it as a teaser or whatever, but you might see it as, an adaptation of the game itself. And in that respect, because, again, because of the constraints of the medium, unfortunately, they have to go down with this really watered down version of the game itself. And it's a shame,
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, again, I don't really hold them at fault for it. In a perfect world, in my opinion, I think that if they had a bigger budget, maybe for like 24 episodes, right, then I think they would have been able to do a lot, right? If like maybe 2 episodes per murder or whatever, right, to give people time to explore, to talk to the characters before they die, that would have made it a lot more meaningful, right? Because not a whole lot of deaths were meaningful, right? I think Sakura was the only one that really touched the survivors, whereas the other ones where it's like as soon as they die, they kind of like disappear from existence. Nobody really talks about them, remembers them.
One thing that I do want to mention, because the game does have the free time events, if you're saying to pretty much make this a 24 episode anime, if you would include the free time events, which ones would you choose? Because if you're going to have a free time event with Sakura, literally the episode before she dies, then you're going to know, oh, she's the next to die. Do you see what I mean? Because then you can only do the free time events in a certain order. Like you can't do them in any sort of order after a certain point because the people would have died. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's already how the show is, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but at least it's better than what we have right now. Because like, again, Mondo suddenly gets a shit ton of development in his death episode, right? So even that cliche is already present as is, so I don't see how it would make the show worse.
That's a good point, and I do want to sort of contradict myself, because even the show does it within itself. The whole Mondo and Ishimaru thing becoming best friends, I knew one of them was going to die. As soon as I was like, someone's going to die in the next episode. It's either going to be Mondo or Ishimaru. Take your pick. It's that kind of thing. It kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth in terms of the story. But any other story points, Kevin? Because I know Joe has a lot to talk about.
I think I might leave my final point until Joe's spoken, because it's about the ending, and I think that we should all talk about the ending at the same time, because it's a pretty big point for me personally.
It was a ride and a half, just to say the least. Because when I went through it, I was expecting... I was under this assumption that, hey, this was happening, like, at the time they entered the school, like people outside are like probably like trying to break in. Like why is it like? But at the same time, why can't you hear them? Why is there no sign?
Quick
of
question
them
for you.
to...
Here, are you talking about your impressions of the story as you experienced them in the game or through the show?
Anime.
Okay.
In the anime, I'm talking like this is from my first time watching it.
Okay.
Maybe it was also due to the pacing of it, but it just felt like this ride just had no breaks, where we went from, hey, they just went into this killing game that for some reason will start within the school and assuming people are trying to get in and save them, and then we go to this post-apocalyptic scenario where the entire world is destroyed. Like, you see Monokumas everywhere, and Junko's apparently put all mankind at extinction.
Goes 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, more like 0 to like 1,000. It's just it's something I just didn't expect from that particular genre. Well, I mean, even though I haven't seen murder mystery for myself for the first before, I still had just this vague idea of how it's structured, like how it usually turns out. But I did not expect it to reach those levels. That was insane for me. So it was something that just blew my mind and something I enjoyed thoroughly. And again, since I was watching it while it was airing, that means I had more time to process all of it between episodes. But like with the main story aside though, because like we're gonna be talking about the tragedy together, this is more of a comparison with the anime and the game, because like this is for me when I rewatched it. I noticed some, like when I talked to Bish before, I mentioned the differences between the anime and the game, but some differences I noticed right off the bat, just stuff I wanted to make a note of, were when it came to like, the investigations, for example, where some information was used in later parts compared to when they were used in the game. So for example, a major example is during chapter 2, during Chihiro's case. In the game, Kyoko requests Monokuma to pause the trial so they could go to Chihiro's body and examine it. In the anime, Kyoko just straight tells everyone that he's a guy.
I guess that's, once again, time constraints, no?
Well, yes.
But it's not something that really affects the story that much, would you say?
It's not something that affects I'm not saying this affects the story. This is just something I've noticed. Like, something that, like, I could help but mention, just because, like, it's interesting how they went through the design process of making the anime. But stuff I really liked about the anime were some unique moments that we didn't get to see. So, like, a big example is you remember at the end, during the end when they were doing the final investigation to find all the secrets of the school, there were pictures that Monokuma gave to each student to throw them off.
Yeah, I do remember that.
In the game, they don't show you Toko's photo, but in the anime, they actually give you a glimpse of how it looks, and then you see everyone, like, just so you guys remember, she has a photo of everyone during the winter time, like making snowmen, running around the snow. And it's the same idea with Junko's face covered.
I didn't necessarily notice that, but you've got an eagle eye, I guess.
And then some smaller stuff that includes like the video viewing during the first case with Makoto and Kyoko watching stuff together at the same time instead of Makoto finding it for himself. The video being an SD card instead of a CD.
Well, that's probably in an attempt to modernize it, I guess.
I suppose so, but it's just like I love seeing stuff like that because it makes the anime stand out a bit. It gives it this freshness, even if it was like the intent was to sort of minimize the amount of time. And then of course the Monokuma scenes, which are not nearly as dynamic in the game as they are in the anime. The anime took it to another level.
That's true, yeah.
I would say. Especially
Especially with the Monokuma rhythm game, the Monokuma song.
Yes, with the rhythm scene and like Monokuma's just quirky animations while they were in the gym. It was so cool.
I think they potentially had
that.
more time to have fun with that. Because I remember in the game it was kind of, sort of, in a way, it was all the same. It was all Monokuma's theater. It was all the same, which is basically Monokuma telling a joke.
It was, and the fact that the game used still images as well. Yeah, but the animation gives everything makes everything more vibrant.
I really did enjoy that. No, I'm not gonna lie.
What I said before, I also mentioned the trial adjustments, where the mini games weren't as used as much as they were in the game naturally, which makes perfect sense. But in like the nonstop debate, which is arguably the greatest part of the whole trial system, was modified to fit the animation style, which I really liked. Where it had a normal discussion, which, I mean, whether it was good for you or not is really up to the individual, but how they weaved that in nonstop debate was something I appreciated. It was fluid. It did feel forced.
I kind of disagree. It was fluid to an extent until it got to the point where they were trying to do Hangman's Gambit. Because I noticed that and I was like...
Well, I'm talking about non-stop debate specifically. I'm not talking about
okay,
Hangman's
fair
Gambit.
enough, okay.
Yeah, because the whole, like, everything else definitely is a whole different story. But I'm just talking about just when we're going through testimony and shooting down statements, which is the bulk of it. But other than that and a few other changes, that's really about it.
So, should we talk about the ending?
I do want to talk about the tragedy, like, now that I've gotten my points out of the way, because the tragedy is the biggest part of this.
To me, it was a clusterfuck.
Is it a good clusterfuck or a bad
No, it hit me. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what? Junko's the mastermind?
You don't expect something like that. Like, they hint towards it, but then it goes, like, full on at the end, and then it's like, how did we get to this?
It made me really excited for the next games. Just to know more about the story. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. In that sense, it did a good job, but I was just like, what the hell is Junko? Junko is the mastermind in all this, and she had a twin sister, and she killed her twin sister. She's really fucked up, and I'm just like, what is this? What is this game?
The Junko twist was crazy when I saw it for the first time. They fooled me. Kodaka fooled
Wait,
me.
hang on. You thought that Junko was actually dead for good?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's because, well, you have to remember, I had no experience with Danganronpa going into it, so I didn't think of Junko as somebody that was major.
Basically, Kodaka played you like a game.
Yeah, he played me like a damn fiddle.
Read you like a book.
That's it, man. He done the same to me as well.
Like, it was a good twist. Like, they handled it well.
I wouldn't say it's a good twist. I mean, it was jarring, but for me, it changed the tone of the anime.
They handled it well in terms of, like, hiding it.
Well, what was the tone before and the tone after the twist, Bish? I'm curious to know.
I'm sorry?
Because Bish says that it changed the tone.
It was to me, it was quite serious, and there was a lot racing against it, and it was just, to me, it just seemed like the sadistic thing, and then it kind of became more than what it was, and I didn't really take it so seriously after that, after seeing what happened and the whole sort of the incident that occurred. I was just like, come on, like, am I really supposed to believe that just a bunch of Monokumas killing people? Like, I couldn't understand.
It was a lot to fucking process. I have to agree, it was a lot to I was just like, hold up, how...
It took away from the show for me, to be honest. It took away from the initial part of the show.
I kind of agree with Bish.
It changed where it was going. I was like, no, this is not where I wanted it to go. It's not like I'm saying I didn't like it, but I mean...
I wouldn't say it was, like, sudden, though.
Like, for me, I find that the direction that they were heading in, like, was good because, you obviously, right, it's not... The entire show is not just gonna be, these kids are trapped in this high school, right? You have the feeling that there's got to be bigger implications, right? It's just what those bigger implications were or lack thereof was the thing that kind of disappointed me, right? Because I was expecting some sort of like Zero-Escape-esque twist where it's like, the world's gone to shit or something, right? And the world has gone to shit, but I was expecting, Junko to have some like really interesting motivations and stuff, right? But basically, from what I understood, like literally in my notes, I just wrote, "That's it?" ? Because like I feel that if I understand the plot correctly, basically all of that shit happened. Like the apocalypse and all of that shit happened because Junko wanted to cause despair or whatever.
Unfortunately, the anime just does not do enough justice for Junko.
I don't understand why she's doing what she does other than like, lol, I like despair.
That's the whole point. Like, you're not supposed to understand why. It's just she wants to feel that despair of causing.
But that's the thing, though. For me, as a viewer, right? I want to understand motivations. If it's just like, lol, they're crazy.
Well, the thing is, you're not gonna understand though. Like that wasn't the intention. Like, you're not supposed, like, as a viewer, you're not supposed to be the one who understands it. That was the whole
But if
point.
I can't understand it personally, I'm just frustrated, right?
But Kevin, the whole point of that is, Joe makes a good point. You're not supposed to understand it because there is ancillary content, right? There's more content to consume after that. There's the second game, there's the anime.
Well, no, that's not what I mean. Like, I mean, like,
also.
there's the point. There's no understanding it. That's the whole idea with
But those things do get revealed
if
to you.
if the point is that you do not understand, personally, I just don't like it. For me, if it's just like, oh, lol, this happened because character decided it would happen, then...
Well, it wasn't that she decided it would happen. It was just, like, her influence was just so strong that...
It just feels like, like, why did the world just get, like... Why didn't the Earth just spontaneously fucking combust, Like, hey, it happened... I mean, there's no logical chain of events that leads me to go, like, okay, I see why this happened,
Well, that's what I mean. There is no logical thing with it. Like, her motives are illogical. That's the whole, like, appeal to it.
I mean, at least with the Joker, right? You're like, okay, you see his backstory and you're like, shit, he's been through some shit, right? And he's fucking insane, right? But like,
Yeah, but how do you not know that Junko's fucking insane? She could be fucking insane.
she is insane, but it's just we don't really find out enough about her, I feel, in the time that we're given. So basically, all I understand is, lol, she's crazy.
But even within the game, and this is something, a whole story thing, you don't necessarily find out the full reason as to why she did this.
And that's just not satisfying for me. I'm not saying that, you know.
And Kevin, for me, I don't feel that you find, like, for me, after playing all of the Danganronpa games and after playing V3, that's the final game. That's when I realized.
I'm not gonna lie. I read through some of the wiki because I wanted to find out. Like, I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. Surely there's got to be some sort of angle that I'm completely missing here, because there's no way that Junko would just do all this shit because lol, she's crazy. There's got to be some deeper meaning, right? But
It's Kodaka. That's a Kodaka
That
way.
is the
dude.
Kodaka way.
and like, I was expecting her to like come back directly or something in the other games. From what I understand, when I watched her die at the end, I was like, yeah, okay, nice joke. She didn't actually die, because, you know, they can't just be like, lol, she's crazy, and then not explain anything, and then just have her die for real.
Well, again, like, you can't assume that. That's just the style of the story. That's just, it's supposed to be illogical. You're applying a logical basis for something that's not meant to be processed.
I enjoy that, you know, logical train of thought in the content that I consume, right? And if I can't really connect to it personally, I just don't get that enjoyment. Maybe it's just me.
No,
Who
I
knows?
agree with you, Kevin, and that's why I said it kind of changed a bit towards the end. It kind of took a different turn, but that's because of the fact that the beginning of the anime was so logical in the sense of, you know, you can figure out what's happening, you can put pieces together, and then the ending was so jarring in the sense that there's no sense of it. You can't make sense. No logic can explain it.
I can say that, you know, the premise is fucking insane, right? Because there's this goddamn teddy bear that's like fucking torturing these kids or whatever, right? But it's because the premise is so goddamn illogical and insane that you want to find out more about it, right? And I just find the explanation to be extremely underwhelming. You know, it's kind of like Game of Thrones season 8, right? Like 7 seasons of build up, and you're like, shit, all right, they gotta have a good conclusion, a good explanation for this, and it's like, nope, it's just.
So, quick question to you as someone who's new to the Danganronpa franchise. Do you feel that this ending makes you want to find out what's happening in Danganronpa 2, the game? Am I right? I just really want to know.
Again, to answer your question, Bish, I feel that no, honestly, I'm not really compelled to watch the next season, right? If this is Kodaka style where it's like, oh, it's completely illogical, deal with it, I'm not gonna explain anything, then I don't know if it's type of show or the type of game for me, honestly, because again, I really like to empathize with characters, right? I'm not saying that I have to completely understand why they do something, but at least see that there's some sort of, you know, continuity from their past to, you know, their present selves, and see why they do what they do, right? And if I don't have that, I just feel that's not satisfying, you know? I'm not saying it's a bad show or, you know, the games are bad. It's just that for me personally, that it's really important for me in characters, right? Like Sakura didn't just drop dead or whatever, right? It was really clearly intentional, right? Every action that she did, you know, she knew that, you know, her sacrifice would have an impact on the other characters. It would get them to band together, right? To fight against whoever was behind that game, right? It was intentional. You see why she did what she did, and there was meaning, there's impact in her actions, right? I just don't feel the same way about Junko. Maybe if they had found a way to, you know, move the reveal up a bit earlier, right? You'd have time to really connect with Junko or understand her a bit more. But all I really know about Junko is that, you know, A, she died in the first episode, and B, she's the one behind it, and she's crazy, and that's why she did it.
The fact that Junko seemingly died in the first episode made it all the more shocking that she came back. Do you see what I mean? Like, I didn't expect that.
Exactly, yeah, like,
For me, I kind of expected that, because I was like, there's no way that they went through all of this crap just to kill off a character, like, after 5 minutes of screen time, and then never use them again, you know? Because it's kind of like Chekhov's gun, you know? Like, you're not going to leave a rifle
I would
hanging on the
argue if
wall.
you're saying that because you've already seen the twist with it, so like now suddenly it all makes sense. Like the whole, because at the beginning you don't really expect.
I called it from the beginning, from episode 1. I was like, calling it right now, Junko is the one behind this, because there's no way. I was just like, there's no way that they would just kill off a character like that uselessly right at the beginning. If she was actually dead, then I've been like, I was shocked with Mizuno because I was expecting the same thing from Mizuno. I was like, no way that Mizuno was dead this early. There's got to be some implications. And when it turns out that she was actually dead, I was like,
if someone has to be the first, no?
but not like 5 minutes into the show, right? You know, at least Mizuno got like the trial and shit. You got into, you know, the actual content of the game, you know, the trials and all that. Junko's death for me, you know, it was an outlier, right? She just fucking
No,
got
but to
executed
me,
like that.
Junko's death made sense because it kind of shows what Monokuma is all about. Monokuma doesn't take shit from people. So to me, there was a reason for Junko's death, at least at the time of watching, because I felt that Monokuma's doing a power move. He's trying to make sure that everyone knows that you can't fuck with him.
Yeah, sure.
Like, that's how it felt to me. I didn't really see it like
I
the
completely
way you're seeing
agree.
it.
I'm not saying that, you know, Junko's death was unreasonable or illogical. I'm just saying that it stood out from the others, right?
No, it stood out, but don't get me wrong. Like I didn't predict that she would be the mastermind because of that. Do you see what I mean? I see where you're coming from, but at the time of watching, I never really understood.
At the time of watching, it was more of like a reality check of like anybody could die at any moment.
As opposed to this is the mastermind, that's why she died. I didn't really connect those pieces together, and I think a lot of the viewers watching wouldn't have connected those pieces together. And it goes back to the point when you're saying about the whole what's it called? I forgot his name now. Kodaka logic, right? I think it needed to be there, right? There's no explaining it because it kind of goes on with this universe. It's world building. Imagine Danganronpa as the first sort of. You're just getting into it. Do you see what I mean? Like that's how I see it. I don't really see it as having to understand. I don't see that there's a need to explain Junko's motives this early in the whole story that is Danganronpa, right? It's like explain like Dragon Ball. Like I'm gonna take it in terms of anime. Dragon Ball, right, had the original series, and they had Z, and then they had all those spin-offs afterward. But you're not gonna explain what's going on. You're not gonna understand everything that's going on in the original Dragon Ball series until you get to Z, right? In that same sense, and then it all kind of makes sense. That's how I see Kodaka's sort of vision for this series and even this sort of first game story. That's how I saw it.
I get that it's important to tease and stuff. You're not going to reveal everything in the first game. It's for me that the important distinction here between the point that you were trying to make and the way that I interpreted Danganronpa was that in Danganronpa, right? From what I understood, it was basically after like, you know, searching through the wikis and stuff, talking with people. Like from my understanding, it was Junko is fucking crazy and she likes despair. Right? There's no other motivation than that. Whereas I feel that what you're referring to is they do have a motivation, but you don't fully comprehend it, or you're only given a piece of it in the first game, right? If Junko had lived or whatever and escaped or whatever, then I'd be like, okay, it's clear that, you know, there's still some shit going on.
But the fact that Junko's dead sort of leads on to it, kind of makes everything else more shocking when you find out what's going on.
But that's the thing. I'm just like, okay, I guess she's dead, and that's a wrap. You know, I don't really feel that.
That's what Kodaka wants you to think. I know it's a bullshit reason for me to give you, but that is what Kodaka wants you to think.
Yeah, it is kind of bullshit. But I mean, Kodaka's all about that bullshit.
That's it. I know it's very unsatisfying to hear that, but that's kind of what it is, and it's genius in that sense. But that's how it is.
It's a very interesting way of story writing.
Unique.
That you don't really see often. I mean, it's not that nobody else has done it before, but it's something that's just, it's something you have to get used to, really. It's not like, I'm not saying that you personally, just saying that in general.
It took me a while to get used to it as well.
Well, thank you guys for like telling us about what it is that made Danganronpa the animation for you, whether it was negative or positive. Just to sort of wrap everything up, I just want to talk a little more about the work that went into the game. Like how, like the production, what it took to make the animation a reality aside from the source material. And like, first I want to talk about, well, we've talked about the video aspects of it, the animation, the art style, Studio Lark, and their way of using lines, their way of coloring. It pops out. Like, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of Studio Lark's style in that regard, along with the the character designs from the source material.
For me, I find that the animation is not necessarily doing it as much justice. In terms of scenery, you get a lot more detail than the game, in terms of like vibrant colors, etc. But the characters seem a lot flatter. Like the colors that are used to color in the characters seem a lot flatter than the game. The game seems a lot more sharper.
Well, actually, no, I know what I kind of see what you're talking about, and I think about it. The colors are a lot brighter.
And it's just it kind of seems a bit washed out at that point. I'm like, okay, and it does kind of help to give that atmosphere, and the fact that there's using a lot more brighter colors takes away from the atmosphere compared to playing the game, because the game is quite dark in comparison. And I don't understand why they might have done that. Might have been some sort of issue, but yeah, it might have been a design choice or it might have just been a mistake. But I think it would have benefited more if they kind of stuck a little bit more faithful in terms of colors. But in terms of artwork, it's very great, and obviously that is artwork taken directly from the game or slightly modified in that sense. I think for me, in terms of my notes, it's all very faithful. Even the fact that they used pink. The reason, for those who are new to Danganronpa, the reason why they used pink blood was to lower down the Sarah rating of the game, so that the game doesn't become an 18+. So they didn't necessarily need to include it in the anime, but it's lovely that they did, right? So I'm glad that they did include the pink blood. That was something really that...
It's eventually become a staple at this point. That's just what Danganronpa is.
Now it has. Like, it's become synonymous with Danganronpa.
Well, except for V3. Not V3, Danganronpa 3, The End of Hope Speed Academy. The future arc actually does have, real blood in it. It was just funny because I think the Spare arc has
pink blood. That's correct. It's an interesting dichotomy, and I think if we ever kind of talk about Danganronpa 3 on Kunai, I think that would be something very interesting to talk about. I think it's very sort of interesting in the sense that the focus of the anime isn't necessarily on the horror or the gore. I think the focus is on solving the mystery, and I think it's evident when they choose not to show certain corpses, right? Or the fact that they choose not to show particular details. Because in the game that they showed certain details. The anime doesn't necessarily show all of the details. Like, for example, not showing burnt corpses, I forgot her name, her hand, or anything like that. Like, the fact that they're not showing that and they're just sort of implying it through story, I think it works in a sense. I know that's not necessarily art style, but I've written it in my art style bit. The animation is quite smooth. I think even the animation for the places during the trial, the guns firing, the fact that the trial room sort of spins around, to do that is very, very difficult, and I'm surprised that they did that. I found it hard. I couldn't quite tell whether it was 3D animation, because you could do that quite easily in 3D. You just pan the camera around, or if it was 2D. If it was all like 2D animation or partly 3D, I thought that was amazing. The fact that they were able to do things like that. It's very unique, and you don't necessarily see that in a lot of anime, the way that the animations are carried out, right? And it's not necessarily expected.
Yeah, that's what I like about Studio Lark. Like, Studio Lark just is able to stand out even when they make adjustments to the original source material. And I love that.
And that's really what I have to say on the art style and animation.
I pretty much said my piece on it along with you, Bish. But Kevin, what do you think of it?
Well, I mean, I think I really kind of said everything in my first impressions, right? It was one of the first things that stood out to me. But a funny anecdote is that I was like, for the death scenes, I remember watching it the first time, and I was like, God damn, that looks fucking amazing, right? And I was like telling my roommate about it. I was like, yo, fucking animation's amazing. And he was like, oh yeah, what scene stood out to you? And I was like, yeah, the death scenes, when the characters die. And he's like, bro, you know that's from the game, right?
Yeah, that's direct from the game. That's not even the studio that done it.
Yeah, so I was like, does it really count? The animation's fucking amazing for those scenes. I'm just like, man, in retrospect, does it really count if it's not the studio, Because it's part of the anime, but...
They actually adjust the scenes a bit to match the style of the anime. If you compare the original game's execution sequences, the new games, not the new games, the anime's execution sequences, you can see more of a still image interpretation of it. Like, you could tell it's more like frame by frame and shaded compared to the original. Like, it's actually really cool if you look at the comparisons. I think the anime did it just a little better, just because I love how the style works with the executions.
I still think, Joe, that I think it was probably slightly modified from the show. I don't think it was done all from scratch.
Well, no, believe me, I remember exactly those executions down to a T. They were 1-to-1.
But yeah, that's basically it. Honestly, I mean, it was just I've already said multiple times that honestly, it's really well done. Not quite up to snuff as the game in terms of the coloring, but just overall the lines again are really good, and the death scenes really good. But again, I'm not sure if that counts because it's from the game. But either way, it really has a distinct style, right? And I go back to the character design, right? More than anything, right? Because you can have good art, but if your character designs are bland, it doesn't really amount to anything.
It's all about that emotion,
Yeah, the characters really have... The character designs have more personality
than the characters themselves. How did I know you were going to say that?
All right.
Because Kevin's just predictable.
Kevin is predictable.
Except maybe Sakura,
True. But that's because Sakura has more time.
Yeah, if anything, Danganronpa is amazing when it comes to character designs. They always stand out.
I really want to jump into, because this is actually the funniest thing is, for all of the Danganronpa notes that I've taken most notes on the music. And it's weird, isn't it?
Lol, that's like a stark contrast to mine.
It's like 3-4 pages on the music, the opening and the ending. The music is great. And I really want to talk about the opening and the ending. For me, the opening music is very reminiscent of games, like Persona 3. With the rap vocals. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. Although I like the segment where
it sounds a lot like Lotus Juice, doesn't it?
It's I'm not used to it. But I like the segment where the female voice is saying, "Just do it, go for it." That bit where Monokuma's like dancing and he's like, the Monokuma dance.
Just do it,
go for it.
Yeah, it's really
that bit when Monokuma's dancing, I found it was odd. It was so sexual. I was like, what is this? But it was so weird.
They actually reference that again in the in Ultra Despair Girls. If you shoot Shirokuma with the music bullet,
he starts dancing. It's weird. But I think the song itself it's called Never Say Never. And looking at the song in more detail,
it is Never Say Never.
The song itself is explaining the struggles that the characters may face during the killing game. So it's kind of like in World God Only Knows, how you have the song that pretty much explains the story. The OP is there, but I think the OP, by the way, fun fact, it's all in English. For those who don't necessarily know, it is
in English. It's actually
all
funny.
in English. And to be honest with you, I think that the ending is much better. I feel that they should have switched places. So I think the ending should have been...
I disagree entirely.
I'll explain why, but I think the ending is more hype. It shows the nature of the show, the nature of the killing game, how crazy and energetic it is, how manic it is. I like the chiptune sort of fading in it in the instrumental because it kind of refers to the game.
The chiptune is the best part of it.
It kind of solidifies that it's a game. And it also sort of solidifies that it's a game for Monokuma. Like, this is all Junko's game, right? So that whole chiptune in the track sort of solidifies that fact for me.
Yeah, you see that, like, I neglected to mention it earlier. You see that aesthetic a lot in the show. You have, like, about how it's all a game, and, like, you see the sprite work for the characters.
The sprite work, and the fact that, even towards the end with the, when they're saying this person has been charged with whatever, and they're taking them away to be executed, that's all sprite work as well. So it's very interesting in that sense. And that one, the ending is known as Setsubo Sei Hiro Shiro Yaku.
It's Zetsu Sei Hiro Shiryaku featuring Tsunaru.
I don't know what it is, but I mean, I find the ending is a lot better than the opening. And I think they should have been switched around.
I would agree with that, yes. But I agree with that, but I can't agree with the fact that if they were to switch it around. It's Never Say Never was like, you know what? A good analogy. A mother cradling a baby, easing them into the cradle. That was me with the opening.
They should have eased... Look, if I heard Never Say Never towards the end, it would have sort of kept me calm for the next episode. But the fact that the ending was so sporadic, and I was just like, I really want to watch the show. I want to watch the episode now. I felt very I felt very restless in that sense. And I didn't like that. I wanted that to be at the beginning to get me hyped for the show, not to get me hyped for the next episode. I like endings to be kind of sort of cool, especially when you have a lot of crazy stuff that goes on.
I like how you said that.
Cool.
Cool.
Like you have a lot of crazy shit that goes on, and sometimes you want to diffuse that, right? You want to be like cool, you know. Every anime, I always say this, every anime has to have a chill ending.
Well, to that end, what if you saw something insane at the end of the episode, then you heard never say never, then you'd feel unease.
Yeah, but I think that adds to it, no?
Well, no, it would be the same idea. Like, because if you're restless from the last episode, then it wouldn't change if you were to see something insane during.
Let's say we did a switch it. I think there's a lot more cases where never say never would work at the end as opposed to the beginning. That's just my personal opinion. Especially after episodes where people just died. You see what I mean? Especially your favorite characters, you're like, oh no. Do you know what I mean? I don't want that crazy. I don't want to hear that. Okay? Especially after a certain character died. I don't want to hear that.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it works so well. These are like my favorite parts of the anime for me. It's stuff like this that makes the anime stand out for me because it's stuff you'll never get to see if you only play the game. Stuff you never get to see or hear, rather. So like, never say never. And the openings and endings in general, while we're talking about it, they just stand out so much. They 100% define what Danganronpa is, what it's supposed to be. I have it saved. I have both tracks saved on Google Play. Actually, I listen to it like every other day.
Hardcore.
Because it's so good.
To be honest with you, I don't know, Kevin. Do you have any thoughts on the opening and ending before I go into the rest of the music?
Honestly, just pretty much what you guys said, but for the opening, for me, it's more so the opening that stood out, honestly, not so much the ending. It's just because, like, the opening, it's really, like, Monokuma's theme, right? It's not the character's theme, it's really Monokuma's theme, and it's really, like, playful and lighthearted, and again, it really hammers down the point that, you know, it's a game, and that's what's kind of fucked up, because, like, you know, just before you're watching, like, you know, these kids die and shit, and kill each other, and, like, all of that is prefaced by this cheery ass weird song, you know. You're just like, what the fuck?
I didn't even think of it as cheery, honestly. That song did not come off as cheery to me. It felt like it was putting salt in the wound, I would say.
Well, that's the thing though. It is the contrast.
Well, it's maybe just how the vocals came to me when I heard it. It sounded like something that was like emphasizing what happened before. Like, that's why I think it's so perfect as an ending, because it reminds you that something insane just happened before, and now you're gonna have to live with it.
Jumping in directly into the rest of the music, right? Surprisingly, Joe, I was kind of disappointed. The OST for the anime is very disappointing, right? It's considering that it is music from the game. I'm not expecting any new music. That's not what I'm disappointed about. The game has 70 audio tracks. We only saw short snippets of the best tracks. You know, we only saw Trial Underground when we're going down the elevator. Trial Underground, that whole, you know, that bit there. That's the menu music before you go into a trial, right? And they're playing that, as you're going down the elevator. It doesn't make sense because there's a different track for the music that as you're going down the elevator, right?
Honestly, the fact that we heard music at all kind of killed the elevator scenes for me, just because they were meant to like have no sound, to have no suspense, like to have some kind of suspense.
But the funny thing is, Joe, even within the game, when you're going down the elevator, there is music that's playing. Is there? Wait, maybe I'm not remembering it, but Trial Underground is definitely not supposed to play. That doesn't make sense. Why is Trial Underground playing during that bit? I'm not saying.
But I mean, like, when I was watching it for the first time, like, I didn't really pay attention to the music itself, just like, it wasn't stuff that stood out to me until I played the game.
The music is great, but I mean, as awesome as some tracks are, we hear them all the time. Like, there's 70 tracks, but you're playing the same track all the time. And I guess maybe it's for consistency.
Yeah, I noticed, like, when I was rewatching it, I noticed that immediately. Like, they were using a lot of the same tracks.
It kind of felt like Scooby-Doo in the sense that every Scooby-Doo episode will always have the same music when there's an investigation going on or where there's whatever. In Danganronpa, even in the game, that's not always the case. So I don't understand why the anime has 70 tracks to choose from, yet they always play the same one. And that being said,
maybe Danganronpa is canon.
Maybe it is Scooby-Doo crossover. I'm waiting for that. And that being said, the best track for me is the investigation track with the trumpet. It's called Box 15. Do you know what I'm talking about? You can search up. It's called Box 15. Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
It gets me.
I prefer Box 16.
Joe, really? Box 15.
No, I'm serious. That's what it's called.
Box 15 is better than Box 16. That's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. It gets me hyped. It actually gets me hyped, and it kind of makes me feel like creeped out a little bit. The song is kind of creepy in nature, but it's like it gets me hyped for the investigation. That's what I have to say. Last thing I want to say, because it's not necessarily a big point, so I'll kind of tack it off at the end of this, is that the game has certain sound effect that you might have not picked up on this, and it's unique to the anime, and it happens at the end of Leon's execution. If you listen closely, there's a line in Arabic that says yes salam, yes salam, yes salam, which means the peace, the peace, the peace. It doesn't make any sense, but the way that it's said, it's kind of like this sort of, I'm imagining, because that line, yes salam, is like, you hear it a lot in like Arabic sort of dramas and stuff. And obviously I'm understanding it, but I mean, it's something when someone's upset, they say that. So that line in itself and the way that it was said kind of made me feel that we're mourning for the character. And that's something it's weird, the fact that this Japanese studio would take that, and it's not even in the game, and put that in like.
Well, you also have to remember this is Danganronpa.
It's weird. It's not even in the game, but they added that in there.
That's the point.
No, it's in the game.
The yes salam is in the game. I've never heard that. Maybe I'm just noticing it in the anime, but that was just so weird.
No, I'm telling you, the executions are 1-to-1.
I didn't necessarily notice it, but the fact that that's in there, that was just like, what? It gave me a sense of, it made me feel something. It made me feel that, okay, we're mourning for this person. Even though I didn't care for Leon. It still made me kind of mourn for him, that one line. But that's really all I have to say about music. It's about Arabic women saying, and I can imagine the particular woman that said that. I just imagine this old Egyptian lady, like a grandma, just wearing black, and she's saying that at a funeral. That's what I'm imagining.
I'm just imagining something from Zero Escape now. Just that it sounds like a Zero Escape thing to do.
Maybe it's an influence. I don't know.
Like Kevin knows what I'm talking
about. Doesn't know. I don't know because I haven't really finished the Zero Escape games. Shame.
Oh man, fuck you.
Another discussion for another time, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a different discussion. That's a whole different discussion. But yeah, like I said before, the sound effects, well, not sound effects, the OST didn't stick out to me the first time. It wasn't something I picked up until I play through the games, actually listen to them thoroughly, and rewatch the show. And I now I think about it, you make like that's true. They replay a lot of different tracks and play tracks at weird times.
It kind of takes you out of it. That's really why I even mentioned it. To be honest with you.
Yeah, but that said though, the voice acting, I love the voice acting. Like
voice acting is weird for me.
Especially if you listen to the English dub too. I listened to it. I rewatched it in English just to get an idea of what the English was like. Bryce Pembroke, I love him. Bryce, I love you. I
can't complain on the English dub. The English dub is good. The sub is good as well. I think Danganronpa is one of those ones that if you're watching it in English, it's not like the English is bad. Funimation did a great job on it. I just find that playing the game in English, I was like, you know what? I'm missing Aaron Fitzgerald as half of Junko. I'm missing Hagakure, Keiji Tang as Hagakure, and I'm like, it's weird. Like,
yeah, the English dub in the game is I love it a lot more than the anime. However, I'm glad we had Bryce as Makoto and freaking Josh Grail as Byakuya. Like Josh, I remember that interview from years ago.
Josh is not listening to us. Josh, if you're listening, come back to us.
Please come back. Please let me talk with you again. Let's play Borderlands together.
Yeah, no, for me, the dubs are good. Don't get me wrong. The dubs are good. I miss the original cast, and I don't understand why the original cast couldn't be used. Like, that's just something for me. And I know it's people tend to have argument about it. There'll be some people that refuse to watch the animation in English because their favorite voice actors aren't necessarily in it.
Well, it's also that's good that you mentioned that because they also changed the script a bit as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Funimation did change the script
because they don't pronounce the Japanese names like through traditional English means. They say they pronounce them by their last name and then call them like the super high school level insert town here instead of the ultimate insert town here.
I find that even in the Funimation dub where they pronounce Hagakure, they say Hagakure, and I'm like, is it really pronounced Hagakure or is it Hagakure? Because when I was talking to Keiji about it, and it's like, yeah, it's Hagakure, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I don't know who to believe. Should I believe Funimation? Should I believe Keiji Tang? I don't know.
It's like it could be interpreted different ways, but I'm of the opinion that it should be pronounced as Hagakure. It's kind of like how it's like in Persona 5 when Ryuji Sakamoto is pronounced as Ryuji
Yeah,
Sakamoto.
no. Just Sakamoto, no. Definitely no. Anyway.
It's a situation like
It is, but it's odd for me. Like, I find Funimation does that a lot. They change the script in such a way. I get why they do that. It's to make it more like...
Well, they did the same thing with Danganronpa 3.
True. They did the same with a lot. Like, to be honest with you, I get it in terms of localization, why people do that. But for me, it was jarring, and I didn't like...
Yeah, the thing is, I found that the voice acting in both the game and the show are pretty solid. Obviously, I didn't spend as much time as the game as you guys, so I don't have as strong of a preference.
Well, just give us your opinion on what you saw initially.
Honestly, I just have to say that I really the voices that stuck out to me, because the voice cast is solid, but the voices that stuck out to me were
Aoi's, of course, right?
No, not Aoi, but although
how dare you?
Impeccable character design.
Hey, them donuts.
But in terms of voice acting, it's probably got to be Naegi. And can we have a shout out for Junko's voice actor?
Junko has two voice actors.
Oh yeah, yep.
I didn't know if you knew that.
Wait, what?
Yeah, in the game and the anime, Junko
Are you
has
talking
two voice actors.
both in the game and the
Yeah,
anime?
because obviously Junko has multiple personalities, so
Yep.
Okay, I thought it was the same person doing those voices.
two
Okay.
different people.
Okay, well, I guess they're still good then, but makes it a bit less impressive. All right, well, I just find that the what is it, the Valley Girl accent that Junko puts on, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like, oh my
The really
god,
fucking like high pitched one. Yeah, that.
oh my god, like, yeah.
She sounds like she sounds
Wait
like a
until you
bitch,
get to Danganronpa
right?
3, and then you hear like Kamakura, yes, queen.
It's too much. I didn't watch it in the dub for that.
That's
so
real.
I don't know if I actually heard that, but you were saying?
But yeah, I think Junko stands out, but I don't know. I guess if it's two voice actors.
No, but bear in mind, two voice actors doing like 5 different voices for Junko. Like you got like sexy Junko, you got like cute Junko, you got Valley Girl Junko, you got like teacher Junko, you got all of these Junkos. So it's like it's still impressive. Don't knock them for that.
But it's still good. Yeah, overall it was really nice.
What do you think of the soundtrack or lack thereof?
Honestly, I made no note of the soundtrack other than like the opening or ending. Honestly, it was okay. I found it was all right. It did its job, but
It didn't stand out.
It didn't stand out. Yeah, there wasn't any track in particular that I took a note of that amplified an emotional moment or anything. Even in Sakura's death, like it did its job, but like it didn't
add to it. Yeah, I get you. Gripes and grumbles. I know we spoke a lot about our gripes and grumbles, but I kind of want to get into my main
Sure,
gripe.
of course.
And that is the fact that the anime is clearly designed to promote the game, and I'm putting that in as a gripe, right? Because
oh my god, here we go.
but I still have to mention it because it's giving us an insight into the production teams and how anime is made, etc. They were making this in a way to the West because the game was released around the same time that the West got the anime, right? Or actually, no, not the West got the anime. So the West got the game when this anime was released, and One to Reload in Japan. So the Vita version.
No, it came afterwards. The game came later.
One to Reload came around this like later to promote this. Effectively, this was there to promote One to Reload, which is the Vita re-release of the original Danganronpa 1 and 2 in Japan.
It's good that you mentioned that because if you remember at the very end, they actually had Monokuma.
That's it. That's one point that I did want to mention. It's also the fact that if you watch the original Japanese as it was being aired in Japan, in the credits, because obviously they changed the credits for the English version, in the credits, Sony is credited. And there's all these other different things. It's clear that Sony was part of the production committee, considering during Monokuma's song, the rhythm game, it featured Sony's trademark buttons, right? The square, the X, the triangle, the circle. Those are trademarks of Sony, and they wouldn't be included in there if they didn't have rights to use that trademark. So it in itself, that is a form of product placement. It's not necessarily noticeable in the Funimation version. They don't change it, but they don't really make it obvious that this is a Sony thing, right?
I did notice that when the rhythm was going through, I saw the X button.
The promotion is evident in the way that the show omits certain details. I think in an effort to encourage watchers to purchase the game, and I think, to be honest, it worked on me at least. Another thing that I want to mention, the omission of minigames, right? The hint, like, they didn't need to put in a hint that there was Hangman's Gambit. They included that purposely because they didn't need to include it. But why include that if you weren't supposed to hint at it? They were hinting at it, and the fact that, you know, if you want that, it's in the game. Like, that's how I see it. The fact that the truth bullets are there, it doesn't make sense. They don't explain what truth bullets are. That's something that's explained within the game when you're playing it, not necessarily explained within the anime.
But do you feel that it would have been better if they didn't include
I think it would have been better if they didn't include the truth bullets, unless they were going to explain what truth bullets are, but then it wouldn't make sense for them to explain it because it's a game mechanic.
It doesn't make sense in the game universe.
Even non-game mechanics. I remember being confused. Like, I was like, why the fuck is Junko appearing in so many different like costumes and shit, right? I was like, why are they doing this, right? And it's like, oh, okay, it's because it's how it is in the game, and it's because Junko has like multiple personalities and stuff, right? But in the show, it doesn't really
make sense.
It isn't as obvious. But don't you feel that, you know, it adds to the aesthetic, doesn't it? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's a show about the game, right? It's not trying to remake.
No, it's not trying to remake the game one for one. Don't get me wrong. For me, it just didn't need to be there. If this was truly something that where you want to tell a story, no frills, right? And you just want to tell the story as it is and whatever, you don't necessarily need things that don't need to be there. It's like including a bunch of extra shit that doesn't need to be there and then charging you for it. That's what it feels like to me. It's not necessarily, it's there for a reason, right? The production, like, they wouldn't spend more time making that and putting those in there because time is money in animation. They wouldn't spend that extra manpower on including these references if it wasn't there to promote a product. That's what I felt like it was. And sometimes it can be a little bit disingenuous, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it is what it is. Like we say that anime is there to promote its source material all the time. There's a lot of anime that I don't watch it and I feel that I'm watching an ad. Through the second or third watch through of Danganronpa, I just felt that I'm watching a big ad for the game. That's what it felt like to me. I felt kind of disconnected from the animation and it was sort of trying to sell me the game. That's how I feel. And that was my main gripe about it. And not everyone's going to feel that.
Okay, when you put it like that, it makes a lot more sense.
And I'm not saying this to shit on the show. I love the show. It's just looking at it a second time or a third time, that's how I feel about it. And it's very obvious and it's very sort of out there, right? Other shows don't do it like even shows like Dagashi Kashi, which actually promotes candy in it, doesn't do that in that way. That's what I wanted to say. That's my really main gripe about it. And I don't want to get into sort of conspiracies. I'm not going to be that kind of guy that's like, that's the reason that they removed character development so you can play the game. I'm not going to say that because that's really dumb for me to say that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the rest of it still stands. Kevin, you have any gripes that you want to air out?
For me, again, it really comes down to the pacing, honestly. I feel that a lot of my issues, you know, when I said that, you know, the character's really underdeveloped and stuff, and, you know, the introduction feels rushed. A lot of it comes down to just the pacing and the length, really, right? And I can't really fault the studio for this, right? Again, this isn't a critique per se. It's more so just a remark, right? That the show could have benefited greatly from, you know, more runtime, right? If they had a bigger budget or something. I feel that as is, it feels like you're playing an animated Let's Play on 2x speed. You know, you have glimpses of something that's truly great, right? These good moments, but you can't help but feel that you're only really seeing like the tip of the iceberg of the show's potential, right? You're only getting these little teases of the game, right? So it has really good highs, but it also has very low lows in that, you know, you feel that a lot of the characters are kind of wasted. You don't feel like you're getting, again, I go back to your analogy with the EA game, I guess, bitch, where it's like you're paying to see like the baseline of the game, but the rest of the flesh, the content, the character development and stuff, that you're really going to need to dive into the game for, right? And I guess you could say that's, you know, that's the whole entire point of the show, right? But unfortunately, because of its shortfalls, because of the limits of this adaptation, right, of trying to shove that like 40-50 hours of gameplay into a 13 episode show, it can leave some people with a sour taste, I find. Like, you don't want to, for some people, you just don't want to continue playing, right? Or, you know, get into the universe more if this is what it is, right? Because everything feels kind of rushed and shallow because of the 13 episodes.
Joe, any gripes and grumbles?
So when I first watched the show, I adored it just because it was new at the time. It's like different, and like, I don't want to repeat words, so just, it's like what I said before, there's just so much that made it so special for me. But when I was rewatching it, I started noticing, maybe it's because the game is to blame as well, but like, putting the game aside, I did notice those pacing issues as I binged it, especially now that I'm like older and I'm more like cognitive of the smaller details. The pacing was definitely an issue because now that I was watching everything all at once, something just fell off. Like, I felt like I wasn't getting, it didn't feel like the story I remembered from a while back. bad. I don't mean that in the sense that the story is diminished for me. I meant more in the sense that the pacing just wasn't right the second time around. That's kind of why I said that in the beginning, that it's a show that I can recommend if you haven't been exposed to Danganronpa at all, but I can't recommend it if you already have prior experience with it.
And I agree with that.
Okay. I can see where you're coming from. Like, for me, I guess it would be the opposite, honestly, because my feeling is that if you're going to have a first taste of Danganronpa, right? Just a taste of Danganronpa, the show may leave you with bad impressions, right? I'm not saying that I had bad impressions, but it's just the way that it ended and, the way that the characters were developed or not developed, rather, kind of left me skeptical of, what the future games have to offer, right? So whereas I feel like if you already are a fan of Danganronpa, you might be able to tolerate its shortcomings because you know that you always have the game to fall back to, right? You know that the source material is fleshed out and good. But if you don't know that, you'll have a bad image of the entire franchise, right? So I would actually say that if you're new to the series and you want to see if it's right for you, don't go for the show because it's an adaptation, sure, but it doesn't necessarily represent the story that well, right? It's kind of like the difference between seasons 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones and the original books, right? It's like, yeah, you get the checklist of all the important things that need to happen, but the in between, the development of the characters, that minutia, right, is lost in the show, in my opinion, right? You don't really get an appreciation for it. So my recommendation would be, if you're trying to get someone into this series, get them to try out the game, either lend them your Vita or gift them the game or something, right? And get them to try out the game and see for themselves if it's right for them, rather than watch a show that might misrepresent.
I get where you're coming from, but realistically speaking, that requires an investment to actually go out and play the game, or to get someone to give you their Vita or whatever, or give you their game to play on your Vita. The anime in itself doesn't have as much investment. That's why, for me, anime adaptations of games make more sense, because then I can see the story. Like even with Persona, that got me into the game. Danganronpa got me into the game, mainly the fact that it was less of an investment. Funimation's like what, £6 a month, or now it's like £10 a month. But it's less of an investment than to watch. Than to play the game, right? Because you don't get this necessarily the same experience by watching a playthrough online of the game. So the anime is like an in-between, like for me. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I think the difference is that Persona 4 I'm looking at it now, it had 25 episodes. It had a lot of episodes. So then in that case, I'm not saying that, in general for all adaptations, you should just ignore the adaptations. But for this case in particular, because they were forced to condense so many things, right? You're not getting the full experience. Whereas Persona, I agree. I wanted to go out and play Persona when I saw the show because it had enough time to do the show justice, right? Because Persona 4 and Danganronpa, they're not the same length because you can spend like hundreds of hours on Persona 4. But, in your first playthrough, right, if you're going in blind, 40 hours is a reasonable amount of time to spend, I would assume, right? And they were able to do it really well within 25 episodes. But Danganronpa got half as much, more or less, right? So they really had to make some sacrifices, right? You're getting the Cliff's Notes of the game. So in this case, I don't think that it's a safe bet. Yes, it's attractive because, it's a lot easier to get a friend to, go on Funimation, share your account with them so they can watch it or whatnot. But the risk there is, they might be pushed away from the series, right? Because the show's, honestly, in my opinion, of a lower quality than the game, right? Not to bash on the studio or anything. It's just because of the constraints again.
Well, that's true. And you do make a good point. It's not necessarily to bash on the studio, because we know the studio has produced great works and even great anime adaptations of games like Persona 4. So, it's the same studio that did that. So we know at least that the studio can do good stuff. So I just wanted to point that out there.
Well, I don't really have much of a counterpoint against that. You make a very good point, Kevin. However, it's also important to keep in mind that there's also a possibility the person watching to understand that it's an adaptation and that the game will be a lot more fleshed out.
But my counterpoint to that would be that, because I'm in that exact position, right? Sure, I got to play the game a bit, but for someone who hasn't played the game at all, for example, once you've watched the show, you know what's going to happen, right? You'd really you'd have to have a lot of motivation to go play through the first game again to get the full experience. I'd understand. I could totally see someone like diving into the second game, right? But I don't see many people having the motivation to go through the first game again because you already know the main points, right? The new thing.
I do want to add on to your point. I played the second game straight away. I didn't play the first game again.
Yeah, I'm probably the only one in our circle to have like played through the whole game again as soon as it came out.
Because you already played the game before watching it.
No. I mean,
no, we watched the show before playing the game.
After I watched the anime,
Okay.
I played the game.
Yeah, both me and Joe. But I'm saying that I didn't go back to play the first game until I finished the second game. So I skipped the first game because I already knew the story, and then I went into the second game as you mentioned.
Yeah, my motivation for playing through the game again was mostly in just how the game handled its soundtrack, the aesthetic, and the free times, of course. And of course the bonus modes, but like that's something we'll talk about another time, maybe in a Galp episode. But my point is, I had motivation to go through it because there's just a lot that the game has to offer that the anime does not.
Finally, would you like to see a second season?
Not that it's confirmed. You're never getting a season 2, and that sucks.
Well, yeah, you're not going to get a season 2, like at least based off of the second game. There's no season 2. But would you like to see, hypothetically? Personally, no. Personally, no.
Even if it had 24 episodes.
Even if it had 100 episodes, I wouldn't want to watch a second season of Danganronpa.
What's the reason for
there's
it?
just something I find that it would be more of the same thing. It would just be like the first one kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. Now thinking about it, I don't want to see the same thing happening because we often with second seasons it tends to follow the same part as the first season. It's often in rare cases, like in terms of Haganai and stuff, the second season is better than the first, right? In rare and in terms of Ass Class as well. In like rare situations. So I don't want it to see going downhill in that sense. But I'm like, for me, I was intrigued at the fact that after the second game and after the Spare Girls, that they were like, we're doing the anime to sort of round it off. That was interesting to me. That was something I was hyped for, as opposed to, yeah, for me that was interesting, that the fact that they introduced something like that. But for me, I'm not really into the idea of watching an anime based on the second Danganronpa, or at least any sort of sequel anime. I would have been more interested in a prequel, which in some sense the spare arc of 3 is a prequel. Am I correct in saying that? At least a prequel.
Yes, it is a prequel to all of Danganronpa, I would say.
A prequel is more interesting to me than a sequel anime, and we did get that. So I'm more excited for a prequel than an actual sequel in terms of second season.
Well, because it gives us new content. It's not like
I don't want a retelling.
It's not like a recreation of the game.
That's why I liked 3 so much. Anyway, Kevin.
Yes, but like we'll talk about that another time.
Second season.
Yeah, for me, I mean, again, I actually would like to see a second season based off 24 episodes because again, most of my gripes here are the fact that I don't feel that it's realistic to expect them to go into any amount of depth within 12 episodes, right? So if they maintain the production quality that they did this season, right, and are given more time to flesh out the characters, more time to just slow things down a bit instead of rushing through all the trials, all the deaths, it would make the show a lot more enjoyable, you know? So I would like to see a second season as long as it's at least 25 episodes or 24 episodes, you know, around that ballpark.
I sort of agree with Bish that I would want to see a second season, but that's mainly because of me playing through Danganronpa 2, seeing that it's not really something that can be adapted well. Let's put it like that.
True. That is true.
It's not something that, like, if it were adapted, then I feel
it would bomb very much because it's such a different story. It's not conventional.
Well, in that case, that concludes our discussion of Danganronpa the animation. Well, thank you guys for giving us your wonderful opinions on everything that is and was the Danganronpa.
Before we actually close off though, and give everyone our emails.
Actually,
emails. That. Yeah.
Emails. What's your email, Kevin?
Oh, Twitter handles.
Okay, Grandma. Emails.
or zip codes, in case y'all want to send us shit.
Our email. So if you want to check us out on Twitter, my Twitter is @GetALifePodcast.
Mine is @Tolvrae, TOLVRAIE.
Word flex, but okay.
That's not how that meme's used, Joe.
Shut up, Kevin. And my Twitter handle is @entropy, spelled ENTRO in a capital P.
Change your Twitter, Joe. What happened to Kibo Gamer?
Joe changes his Twitter as much as he changes.
Well, I mean,
his
at the time of this recording, it's probably going to be changed. But like, I haven't changed it yet. But at the time of this recording,
What if I steal?
Just so tell you guys in on Joe's next Twitter handle, it's @BigDickEnergy, Galp. So if you want to send him a message, please send him a message @BigDickEnergy.
There's probably somebody named Big Dick Energy that's gonna be really mad at you.
Oh wow! Probably someone's already taken it. Actually, his new Twitter page is actually @Chemical Sora. That's his.
Yes, it's @Chemical Sora.
Or @Kane_.
Send everything to there.
That's what it is.
I mean, he actually talks on Twitter, so I mean, you'll guess your activity.
Just also before we wrap up, I just want to mention a big thanks to our sponsors, Crunchyroll and Japan Crate. Remember, if you do want to check them out, you can check them out in the link in the description, or if you go to www.getalifepodcast.com/kunai, there you have all of the links to all of our episodes of Kunai. It's well designed. You can check which shows that we've talked about. You can also suggest shows for us to talk about, and you can click on our sponsor links directly in there. And yeah, Kevin, I'm going to lead this off to you, mate.
Yeah, so our next episode is going to be a show I don't think a lot of people heard of, but that I still am really excited to cover on Kunai, and it is...
Kaiji-kun! No,
Kaiji-kun.
It's not Kaiji.
It is Good Luck Girl, but if you haven't seen our episode on Kaiji, then... Yeah.
Why are you giving our Kaiji episode a shout out?
Shout out.
When you
because the Kaiji episode
it's a great episode.
Kaiji.
Don't get me wrong, but you're in the spotlight now, Kevin, and yet you're so humble that you're giving a shout out to another episode.
It's because I'm Canadian, I just can't help myself.
You can't help yourself.
But yeah, I hope you all look forward to Good Luck Girl because it is a criminally underrated comedy.
It's an underrated show. I'm watching it currently at the moment, and I'm making my notes on it. There's certain things that I know I'm going to talk about, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about certain things. So that's going to be a hype show for me. I do want to mention that you can watch that show on Crunchyroll, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it? Crunchyroll?
I watched it on Funimation.
Is it? Is it only on Funimation? I thought it was on Crunchyroll as well.
It could... Honestly, after the, the whole, like, not merger, but sort of merger of Funimation and Crunchy and, like, the separation again, I'm at a loss as to, which shows have remained on Crunchy, which shows have...
Look, as long as My Hero Academia is
still
on Crunchyroll, I'll be fine.
No, actually, no. You're right. It is on Funimation, and it's a Studio Sunrise show. That was a bit shocking to find out. Another thing that I want to say before we wrap up, this year, actually, by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be the 5th anniversary of Kunai, and so you might see some special content coming out in the summer to sort of commemorate that. We'll be trying our best.
Yeah, it's Galp's Eternal Summer.
Galp's Eternal Summer, that's it. Free Welcome to Summer.
I mean, it's going to be Eternal Summer because we're probably not going to get the episode out until, like, next winter.
But that was a free joke, by the way, Joe. I don't think you got it, but you still came with a good joke.
No, I did get it, you freaking idiot.
So we're going to be doing some episodes with guests. I'm working also. This is a little bit of an update. I'm going to say one more thing. There is a possibility that we'll be getting Tyson back for one episode. Only one episode of Kunai. And Kevin, I think you might know what episode.
I'm pleased to announce that episode will be SYD. No, actually, we have no idea what it is.
If we got Tyson for SYD, oh my god, I would fucking go apeshit. If we got Tyson for SYD, I don't think that'll happen. But if we got Tyson for SYD, shit, man. I was gonna say, what was it? What was that anime that we fucked up so much? What was it called? The one that we didn't watch.
Danmachi.
Not Danmachi. It wasn't Danmachi. We watched Danmachi.
No, we watched Danmachi. What are you talking about? Danmachi was my first one.
No, not Danmachi.
Denki Guy.
I'm confusing the name. What is it? Denki Guy.
What if we watched Denki Guy with Tyson? That would be so So fucking
Yeah.
annoying. We wouldn't do that anyway, but we'll be doing.
Let's wrap this up. Though,
Oh,
guys.
whoa,
Seriously,
whoa.
We've had the longest conclusion ever.
What a bitch. All right,
Okay,
Kevin. Okay,
Look, this
anyway.
is fun.
So hope you guys have enjoyed the episode, I guess.
Yes, I hope all of you have enjoyed it. I very much wanted to get this out for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got it done. Look forward to some other Danganronpa content that may or may not be coming to the channel. Not channel, onto the podcast sometime soon.
Yeah. See ya. Johnny.
Yep, stay healthy and stay sexy.